Okay, I'm Clint Hawker. I'm born and bred in Beaufort West. I grew up in Kwamandlenkosi township. Then it was the lower part of the township was called Satisbai. So I grew up there. My primary school education I got at the Bantu Community School. Unfortunately, we did not have a high school here, so I had to go and complete my high school career in Dimbaza, about 50 kilometers from King Williamstown, in 1976. So in 1976 I came back around August because of the situation in the country. I came in, I worked for a couple of months. Then I went back to study again in Grafrenet at Noeva Secondary School. But there also I went to do standard 8. And only up to August, and the school was burned down. It was a corrugated iron school. It was burned down, and then I had to come back and I worked again. I worked for a number of years at the garage, Caltex and BP garage, and then in the early 80s I went back to school again in Pedi in Ngoshwa, then also nearby King Williamstown, where I completed my matric, and then I went to study at UCT and came back, and I started to work as a teacher at Mandlenkosi Secondary School. Currently I'm a circuit manager and managing all the schools in the Circuit 7, all the schools here in the Central Karoo, responsible for about 29 schools. Yeah.
I just want to know, since you grew up here, and at least you know the social developments and economic issues and maybe political issues, what would you say, what is the is there any change of any social issues or any political issues that you may identify in Beaufort West?
Yeah, you see, there are a lot of changes, one thing for sure, because as I indicated, we did not have a high school in the township. We've got a high school now in the township. The township is not as it used to be in those years. There are quite massive changes in the township, and in fact in the broader Beaufort West as well. Although there's still perhaps maybe some imbalance in terms of the economics in our town, especially in the township, but there is movement. I was involved for quite some time in the ANC. I mean, up to now, I was involved in the ANC. I had various positions in the movement since the unbanning. Was the first chairperson of the ANC in this particular town. Was involved even after 94. I was still involved in a number of struggles to empower our people in the town, because even after 94, most of the shops in our town only employed colored people, most of them. And I remember we had this one huge struggle in 1993, where we petitioned all the shops which only employed colored people. Out of those struggles, I mean, some people even died. There's one boy who died, Nono Kelem, was just shot by the police just out of the blue. He was mentally was not okay, but they just met him and they just shot him, whilst the actions were taking place on the other side and here in town. So there were massive imbalances, and I would say even today, if you look at the employment in town, there's still a huge imbalance, because there are still a number of shops who only employ colored people, and you will not find Africans there. And that is one of the things which we discussed a couple of weeks ago. Most probably there will be again the action against those shops. One don't know what their point of departure is in terms of that, but that is the one problem we have. On the education front, I'm now currently quite active in education. I think in education things have stabilized in our town, although we still have a problem with respect to challenges in mathematics and passing rates and those things, but education is quite accessible to the majority of the people.
What would you say then in terms of language? Are they also African people in the colored schools and so on in the surroundings?
Yeah, there's quite a mix. There are 2 schools where there's a big mix in terms of primary schools, 3 in fact. Teska, almost about more than a quarter of Teska's learners are African. The same applies with St. Matthews. St. Matthews is on the border of the two townships. So St. Matthews have also got a big number of kids from the township and Barna. So there's quite a lot of mixing. The same applies with the high schools. Bastians have got quite a big number of kids from the township. And the same happens with Mandlenkosi, the school in the township, the high school in the township, and the primary school. There are a lot of kids from Rasdin, from the colored community, who are studying there because their parents want them to study the language. So although we have challenges currently, with the kids when they get in, but once they are in the higher grades, then it starts normalizing. At Mandlenkosi we've got not so many, but there are a few kids from Rasdin, and you will be surprised when you speak to them. They speak fluent Xhosa, and that is quite something good in terms of the mixing in the town and so on. The one problem we have, however, is with the former Model C schools. The former Model C schools are trying to bar our children from the townships because there you must pay. They are school fee paying schools. They only get a meager amount from the government in terms of subsidy. So they are trying to hold our children away because it's always this issue of Afrikaans, and most of our people would love our children to study in English. And that's an Afrikaans thing, although they will say they are dual medium. Mostly they deal with their things in Afrikaans and so on. Okay. Yeah.
No, I know in the 80s, originally I'm from Oudtshoorn, I know in the 80s they were sort of staunch Labour Party or House of Representatives in Beaufort West. Do you remember that period?
Yeah.
Leaders of the time, I think the ASOP and so on, from Beaufort West.
Yeah, no, I remember the ASOPs with their Labour Party things and so on, but that was really doomed for failure because it was a system which was created by the then government. We had these community councillors also in the township, Mr. Vumazonke, Mr. Kwebe, and so on. And that was really doomed for failure because, they wanted you to cook your own pot there in the corner and ignoring the broader Beaufort West. I remember at some stage, there was a campaign against the community councillors. There's this one man in the township who was almost killed with a tire, a necklace. And that was because he was a community councillor. And the people in the township were very against those community councillors, One day he was coming from town, and comrades saw him, and they attacked him. And he already had the necklace around his neck, but then it was a struggle to find a matches. So he was saved by the issue of the matches. And so in that way he was just severely beaten up, and eventually did not get the necklace, Sole Aesop and the Labour Party things, they were more for the colored people, in the colored area. So the colored people during those days did not have a resistance type of attitude. They were just accepting as is, because they were like the second-class citizens. We were the third-class citizens. We were getting nothing. And they were getting all the things, I remember at one stage, the apartheid government sent in a group of Inkatha people into the township, to come and beat up the men folk. And when they got into the township, all males were subjected to the stadium. It does not matter who you are, but all had to come to the stadium. So that they can check you out if you've got any marks or a bullet wound or whatever. And whilst that was happening, the colored people it was something nice to them. I mean, remember, they were sitting there on the walls of Aesop, watching this thing which is happening and so on. They didn't bother, they didn't care about it, So with them it was nice then. Because they were not really affected. I mean, when it comes to houses, they got houses, although the Rasdin was born out of the township. All those people were staying in the township. But they got houses before we got houses, So they were really, they had all the schools there, whilst we were studying in churches and an old clinic, where I studied. And we did not have a high school. We started to have a high school when the Santa Clinic was converted into a high school. And that did not come automatically. That was because of the struggles of the learners. Because the kids stood up then and said, we need a high school. And then the Santa Clinic was converted into a high school. When I started teaching there, something which was so bad is that there was a cold storage place where they would normally store the corpses of people who died. That thing was still intact there, And then out of that, another struggle started for the reconstruction of Mandlenkosi. Remember at one stage, the learners' Kosas had a sit-in. There's this new school now here, Beaufort West Primary. Kosas had a sit-in there and said, we are going to occupy this school until our school has been renovated and everything is fine there. So we had to travel every morning to that side of town. Out of the township, we had to come to Hillside for school, and the learners, everybody was just going there. So in that way, the school was eventually, renovated and so on. And that time the minister was Upengu, Sbusiso Upengu. Yeah, and he came to unveil this new building and so on. But it was quite an issue. Now, all the things in the township are born out of struggle.
Because I know at one stage there were guys who were coming from Beaufort West who come and start in Oudtshoorn in Fezeki.
Yes.
People like Skoko, Labofiki, and who's the other guy? Also from Beaufort West. He had a child somewhere in Oudtshoorn. Yeah. And even in the 80s also, about 83, 84, there were also some youngsters from Kwandwanyana who was also studying in Oudtshoorn, Zoto and Wanyana and so on. Because I remember also the incident that we alluded to, the one of Inkatha, because at one stage in Oudtshoorn we were informed that the Inkatha is in Beaufort West. They are coming for Oudtshoorn. That all men must be aware, British themselves, for the attack. And it was a Thursday night, I remember very well. Yeah. No, it's true. So, in your observation, politically now, at least Beaufort West, how would you categorize it in terms of political development, in terms of representing communities, colored community, the white community?
Yeah, you see, I think we still have got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of representation.
Yeah.
You see, currently in terms of public representatives,
Yeah.
Unfortunately or fortunately, we've got this ward thing, and each ward is represented by a particular councillor is for a ward and so on.
Yeah.
And you see, we have this challenge in our town. And I think sometimes people are afraid of talking about it, you know. The manner in which sometimes our leaders are identified, you know, because I had a little conversation with a group of youngsters on Saturday, and they were quite up in arms in terms of why should we have the same mayoral candidate for the past 20 years, you know. It's almost like Mugabe.
Yeah.
And I was laughing this morning when I was listening
To the
radio.
Yes,
Did you listen to him?
Listen to
Do you hear how he speaks?
I
Even?
speak that.
Hey, man, it's an old man, man. You know. Now, these boys were against the issue of us having the same person as mayor for the past 20 years. You know, and they were questioning the issue of, does it mean that there is no capacity in the town? You know, there's nobody else who will be able to take the flame and move forward with it, you know. So those are some of the challenges, and I think the thing which makes it worse now is that
does they have any sort of layer grooming leadership?
But that is the problem of our political leaders who are not doing that, you know. There are a few guys who are raising their hands, but they are not capacitated, you know, to get there. I mean, the main issue now, and that thing will maybe cause some problems later on, is that both mayoral candidates are colored currently. At the SDR, the regional, the district, and at Beaufort West municipality. Whilst in the past, it was always, it's an African here, it's a colored there, or the other way around. But they will always, just to try and accommodate the entire town, have a colored and an African, colored and an African. But now it's colored, and there are some huge noises in the township about this thing, you know. I'm not sure how far it will go, but I mean, as it used to be in the past. In the past, we had these community councillors with a narrow-minded vision. At least now it's better. We've got a representative who's supposed to be dealing with all the problems in the community and so on. Although I think the other main issue is accountability of these people, because some of them just don't care. They just do whatever they like. They don't go back to the community in terms of reporting and so on, you know. So there's a little bit of a problem there. And until such time that has been corrected, you know. One don't want a situation where people are going to be revolting against the councillor.
Yes.
Because the councillor does not consult and does not hear what the people need and thinks for the people. You need this, and then I'll just do this. Yeah. So that is perhaps maybe one other aspect which one will have to deal with and so on. Okay.
But looking at the CBD or the central town of Beaufort West, I've walked up and down. I don't see any shops owned by African people in the mainstream of economy. Is it a proper observation that I've done?
Yeah, no, it is like that. It is like that. People who are in town are foreigners. They are in town, and the whites. Shops which are maybe owned by our people, sure. There's only one little shop there by ShopRite. It's a small Anyana shop. That is the only one I really know of.
And a crook bar.
Yeah, of course, yeah, but otherwise there's nothing. It's whites or foreigners,
Is there no something called the Chamber of Business within Beaufort West?
There is a chamber of business, but that one was also very white. It was basically the white people. I don't think our people are organized in terms of that sector. It's only the whites who are organized in terms of that. That is why I was highlighting the issue of employment. Because even that chamber of business is a white thing. There might be one colored guy, Georgie, but Georgie got a white mentality. He might be in there, but the rest will it's obviously just whites,
So, I know in the 80s that Beaufort West was very strong in terms of soccer and so on. I remember there was a club called the Mazion who were very strong in this region. So in terms of sport today, I've heard very little about any sports in Mandlenkosi or rugby or tennis and so on. What is happening currently in terms of sport of molding youngsters?
Yeah, I think that is one area where we are lacking, because it's right as you say, in the past we had very strong soccer teams in the township. But currently the township soccer teams are almost non-existent. There are a few strong teams in Rasdin, some who are playing in a league above the local one. But otherwise in the township, I think it's a challenge, the issue of sport. That is why you'll find that, if you go to the township on a Saturday, on a Sunday morning, you'll find these drinking places are flooded by the youth, because there's no other activity really, and they only indulge on liquor. And I think that is precisely because there are no other activities which the youth can do, and so. Okay.
So in terms of sports facility, is there any move from the local municipality at least to improve some facilities within the township? Because I've made a turn around there.
Look, the stadium was a few months ago a little bit upgraded because it was quite vandalized. We've got the youth hub now with a gym, but it's not yet really in operation because there are still problems with employment issues at the youth hub. So the youth hub might be a center which can attract the youth to participate in other activities. But the youth hub needs to be coordinated properly, in terms of the programs which they will be running there, because the gym is there, it's fully equipped, everything is there, but it's not yet really in operation. People just go and do their thing there and then they leave. So there is no control over what is happening currently there, And that is the baby of the municipality.
Is there any at least strategic leadership to look at the vision of the facility and what it wants to attain?
But that is the name Youth Hub. It's supposed to accommodate the needs of the youth, because there are various things there for the youth, like the gym. There's a little hockey thing there, or seven-a-side type of soccer thing. You know, then there's an amphitheater, the hall is there, then there's a site which is, a site which currently the South Cape College is using for lessons and so on. But there are a number of things. You see, one of the things which I think is lacking, and that was one of the things I was propagating personally with the planning stages of the Youth Hub, was a library. Then I was told, no man, there will be an electronic library. I said, an electronic library is not the same as a library with books, man.
Books, yes.
We want our kids to read. They must come to the library and take out a book and go and read at home for a day or two and then bring back the book, you know. So that is one thing which I personally am trying to explore, you know, a library with books, not an electronic library. Electronic library, you will only be able to deal with it there, but you can't go home with it. And yet when you've got books, you come and take out a book. We want our kids to be able to read, because that is a problem we have. Our kids can't read, and if you cannot read, then you will not be able to perform at school, because everything at school needs you to be able to read. And that is what we want. We want our kids to be able to read. When I take it from my kids, I taught my kids, I instilled the culture of getting to the library and take out a book weekly, so that they read. They must read. And they never had problems at school because they are used to reading, you know. And that is what we want also in the Kasi, you know. We need to have a library where kids can come and take out a book, read, and then come back again, you know. Schools have got little libraries, but those libraries are not like a community library where the kid can come and sit. You know, there might be computers, take out a book, go home with a book, read it, and then return it. That is really what we need, you know. But as I say, that is one of my personal projects for the township. I've made some contact with some foundations in terms of that, because we really need a library. There's a little small library here by, I'm not sure whether you know, there's area up Pezula Boki Base. We called it Boki Base. It was a shop, you know. It was the first plaza. So, but that has now been converted into one site. It's got machines for a few ladies to do some needlework and so on. And then the other wing of it, there's a smaller room, which they call now the library. But it's small, you know. But it's better than nothing. At least it's a start. So if one can really get the expansion of that thing into a proper library for the kids in the Kasi, then it would be quite something fine.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So that at least to inculcate a learning amongst the youth. That's very cool. Now, would you say some of the then 1983, 84, 85, there were a number of political activists, like people like Greg Mlonyeni, the Mandla Nkosis, and so on. Is there any role that they still play, Robo Greg, in the township or so?
No, there's really nothing.
Nothing.
Greg is in Kimberley, is working in Kimberley, and one understands, you know, he's working there, so there's really nothing which he can do politically here.
So some of the youth or some of the structure doesn't rope you guys into sort of strategic.
No, I'm still quite involved.
Yeah.
I'm still quite involved. I've just withdrawn now.
Yeah.
I was the chairperson of our branch, ANC branch, but I've withdrawn due to the fact of my position now.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't want my office to be seen as a political office, you know.
Yes.
So I've withdrawn, but I'm still involved in the movement.
Yeah.
In terms of giving guidance and supporting and so on. You know, I was then myself and Mandla Nkosi and Abu Greg and a few other guys. And that was really the time when the battle against the community councillors was there. And Mandla Nkosi and Greg, they took it upon themselves to go embark onto this program of burning down the houses of these councillors, you know. I was not involved in that program, and I was not aware. These two guys decided it themselves. And we were rounded, after that thing, we were rounded by the police from your town.
Yeah, they know Captain Marx used to come to Beaufort West, and then you will hear down there also that they've rounded the township.
Yeah, no, those guys, they came and picked us up about 2 o'clock in the morning, you know. And by that time, Greg was already in Oudtshoorn.
Yeah.
He and Mandlenkosi. But then they came and picked us also up, as innocent as we were. And although we were involved in the structures locally, but we were not involved in that mission. You know. We were taken to Oudtshoorn and beaten up there by those Boers with the thick arms, you know. Then they take you up
to the third floor.
Yeah, and they show you there. So, I remember in the nights I slept in this place, Duiselsdorf.
Yeah.
And there were lice in that
cells.
those cells, you know. But we had to enjoy it, and so on, you know.
Because I remember I met Boy in Dwanyan in the prison up there. Because some of them, Boy arrived with the other guy. They were separated, but Boy was in our cell.
Okay.
On Dwanyan. There was one chap that they mentioned, apparently was a police of the railway. What was his name? Is it not Silo? Something like that. He was also arrested in Beaufort West. They said he used his work firearm.
Oh, Swela.
Swela was also sentenced at one stage.
Yeah.
He ended up Cape Town, apparently.
Yeah, he's in Cape Town. I'm not sure whether he's teaching or something, but he's in Cape Town,
because the group of us, when we came out of prison, I understand they also got bursary from the South African Prisoners Education Trust.
Okay.
To go and study. And some comrades from Beaufort West. Some people who came from Beaufort West was Mkwambe. Is he still around?
Yeah, Mkwambe is still here. Mkwambe Fahlakile. But he's still here, He's still here.
I know some guys were like Tabiso Falat.
Yeah, Tabiso is late.
His papi,
he's late.
So those were the comrades that I know from.
Okay.
From Beaufort West and so on.
Okay.
I heard that Brim Fenyan, is he still around?
Biro is somewhere in the Transvaal, in Gauteng. I haven't seen him for quite some time.
Because at one stage I met him in Tsitsikama, one of those garages he was sort of managing there.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought he's in Gauteng, but I haven't seen Biro for quite some time. We were together at school, myself and him.
And he was great.
Yeah, we were together in school, even in Dimbaza, we studied together there. His father was still alive. And I was fortunate that whenever we go to school, I just go with him and his father.